They say the mind becomes peaceful when the world grows quiet. But what if the opposite is true? A young nun once sat alone on a frozen mountain, begging the storm to stop so she could meditate. But when the wind shook her home and the walls trembled around her, she finally understood the truth that changed everything, not by conquering the chaos, but by listening to it. Tonight, you don't have to try to be wise, or peaceful, or even calm. You don't have to fix anything. You don't have to solve your life. You're allowed to simply lie there, exactly as you are, and let the night carry you. Feel your body resting where you are. Notice the simple fact that you are being held. The mattress, the pillow, the blanket. They are all quietly supporting you without asking for anything in return. Let your awareness drift down to the back of your head, where it touches the pillow. Imagine the fabric there, soft, slightly cool at the edges, warmed beneath your skin. Your hair spreads out or presses down. Maybe a few strands tickle your forehead. You don't have to change it. Just notice it and let it be. Your shoulders have been working all day, carrying invisible bags of thoughts, worries, plans. In this moment, imagine those bags sliding off and dropping softly to the floor beside your bed. Feel the weight leaving your shoulders, the gentle pull of gravity as they sink a little deeper into the bed. Sense the fabric of your shirt or pajamas against your skin, maybe a slight roughness where the seam runs along your arm, or a smooth, worn softness where the cloth has been washed many times. There is nothing to fix here. Just feel what is already happening. Bring your attention to your hands. Are they resting on your belly, by your sides, tucked under the pillow? Wherever they are, imagine a warm lamp shining on them in your mind, a gentle golden light that reveals every little detail, the curve of your fingers, the slight tension or looseness in your knuckles, the quiet pulse beneath your skin. Maybe one finger twitches a little as it relaxes. Maybe your palms feel slightly warmer than the air around them. Notice how your body breathes and your hands softly rise and fall. Now, listen. Listen to the sounds around you, not as intrusions, but as part of the night. Maybe there is a distant car passing by, a soft hum of a fan, the subtle creaks of the room settling into the darkness. Perhaps there is a dog barking somewhere far away, the faint buzz of electricity in the walls, or the whisper of the wind trying to touch the window. Imagine all these sounds as waves on a black, calm ocean, rising and falling slowly, never disturbing the deep water below. You are that deep water. Take a slow breath in through your nose, but don't force it. Just allow the breath to be a little deeper than usual. Feel the cool air brushing the inside of your nostrils, traveling up into your sinuses, then down into your chest. Notice how your ribs gently expand, like doors opening without any effort. Hold it for the briefest pause, just a soft stillness, then let the breath fall out on its own, like water spilling over a smooth stone. Feel your chest soften as the air leaves, your belly gently sinking. Again and again, breathing in, breathing out, waves on the shore. As you breathe, imagine you are walking slowly through a quiet Buddhist temple at night. The world outside is dark, but inside the temple there is a soft amber glow from old paper lanterns. You can almost hear the faint crackle of the candle wicks, the gentle pop of cooling wood in the beams above. Under your bare feet, the wooden floor is smooth and cool, polished by countless steps before yours. With every breath, you take one more step along that hallway. On the left, there is a sliding door slightly open, and a thin line of moonlight spills through, turning the dust in the air into tiny silver stars. On the right, You sense the presence of the main hall, where statues of Buddhas sit unmoving, their faces calm and timeless. The air smells faintly of sandalwood incense and old paper sutras, a scent that feels like memory itself, comforting and familiar even if you've never been there before. You breathe it in and feel your thoughts begin to settle, like snowflakes slowly sinking onto a still lake. You reach the end of the hallway and find a cushion on the floor, waiting just for you. The cushion is thick and soft, but firm enough to support you. In your mind, you lower yourself down onto it, feeling your knees bend, your hands touching the floor for balance, the fabric compressing gently under your weight. You're not forcing the mind to be quiet. You're just sitting, the way a mountain sits, the way a tree stands. All around you, the night deepens. The lanterns glow softly. The temple breathes with you. Thoughts might still appear, worries about tomorrow, echoes of old conversations, half-finished tasks. Instead of pushing them away, you imagine them as autumn leaves floating down a slow river. You watch them drift by, this worry, that memory, and you let them go. The river doesn't cling to any leaf. It just carries them all, without judgment, without hurry. As you rest here, I will tell you a story. Not a story you need to analyze or remember, but a gentle story that your mind can wander in, like walking in a garden in the dark, feeling your way by scent and sound and the soft shape of things. Long ago, in a small monastery resting at the foot of mist-covered mountains, there lived an old monk named Shen. His eyebrows were long and white, like tiny feathers resting on his cheeks, and his robe, once a deep saffron, had faded into a soft, dusty gold from years of washing and sun. He walked slowly, not because he was weak, but because he believed the earth deserved to feel every careful step. The monastery was simple. Its roof tiles were the color of wet stone when it rained, and of warm rust when the sun set. The courtyard was paved with uneven stones, cool and slightly damp at dawn, warm and comforting under the afternoon sun. In the middle of the courtyard stood an old stone basin filled with clear water. Fallen leaves floated on the surface, their colors changing with the seasons, green in spring, bright yellow in autumn, pale and fragile in winter. One late evening, when the sky was turning from purple to indigo and the first stars were beginning to pierce the thin veil of cloud, a young man arrived at the monastery gate. His name was Liang, and his face was tight with exhaustion. The skin beneath his eyes was darker than the rest of his face, as if months of sleepless nights had left shadows there. His clothes were dusty from the road, and his shoulders looked like they were holding up a sky only he could see. He knocked on the wooden gate. His knuckles struck the old wood with a hollow, tired sound. From inside, he heard the slow shuffle of footsteps, the soft whisper of robes brushing against the floor. The gate opened just enough for a thin line of lantern light to spill out into the darkness, and there stood Shen, the old monk, his eyes half-mooned in a quiet smile. "You have walked far," Shen said softly, his voice no louder than the rustle of leaves. "Come inside." Liang bowed, feeling awkward and clumsy. As he stepped through the gate, he noticed the coolness of the stone under his feet, even through his worn sandals. The courtyard smelled faintly of damp earth and pine needles. Somewhere nearby, water trickled, a slow, patient sound, as if the mountain itself were breathing. "I can't sleep," Liang blurted out, his voice cracking slightly. "For months, my mind won't stop. Every time I close my eyes, it's like 1,000 hands pulling at me. Regrets, plans, fears. I thought maybe the monks would know how to quiet it." Shen listened without interrupting, his head tilted slightly to one side. The lantern light danced on his wrinkled face, filling the lines with soft shadows. For a moment, he said nothing. The silence stretched out, but it didn't feel empty. It felt like a blanket being slowly unfolded. "Come," Shen finally said. "Let's drink some tea." He led Liang to a small wooden room that opened onto the courtyard. The door slid open with a gentle hiss, and inside the air was warm and smelled of roasted barley and old bamboo mats. In one corner, a low table had been set, with a clay teapot and 2 small cups, no larger than a child's palm. The teapot was rounded and simple, its surface showing tiny cracks from years of use, like a dried riverbed. Shen motioned for Liang to sit. The young man knelt on the mat, feeling how the straw pressed faintly into his knees. He rested his hands awkwardly on his thighs, fingers curling and uncurling. Shen moved with slow, deliberate motions, as if each gesture were part of a quiet ceremony. He lifted the teapot, feeling its warmth in his palms, and poured a thin stream of tea into the first cup. The tea was a deep amber, catching the lantern light. A thin thread of steam rose, twisting and disappearing into the air. As Shen handed the cup to Liang, the young man noticed the rough texture of the clay against his fingertips. The cup was warmer in the center and cooler at the rim. He brought it closer to his face and breathed in. The scent was gentle and toasted, with a hint of something sweet beneath it, like roasted grain and a memory of smoke from distant fires. Shen poured his own cup and did not drink right away. He simply held it, feeling the heat seep slowly into his hands. Liang looked at him, waiting for instruction, for some secret formula, some magic phrase to chase away the night. "What do you feel?" Shen asked quietly, his eyes on the surface of his tea. Liang blinked. "Tired," he said. "Restless. Afraid of my own thoughts." Shen shook his head gently. "In your hands," he said. "Right now, what do you feel?" Liang looked down at the cup he was holding. He had been so wrapped in his story that he hadn't really noticed it. He paid attention now. The clay was warm and solid, grounding. The surface was not perfectly smooth. It had tiny bumps and ridges, places where the potter's fingers had left their mark. The rim pressed lightly against his thumb. The steam from the tea brushed his face with a faint, moist warmth. "It's warm," Liang said slowly. "A little rough. It smells kind of nutty." Shen nodded. "Your mind already left your body," he said softly. "It ran into the past, into the future, everywhere but here. But your body stayed. The tea stayed. Sleep does not come to where you are not. It can only find you where you are." Liang frowned slightly. "But how do I stop the thoughts?" he asked. "They don't listen. I try to push them away, to clear my mind, but they just come back stronger." Shen lifted his cup to his lips and took a small sip. The sound was almost inaudible, just a faint wetness, a breath. He closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the warmth spread down his throat and into his chest. "Have you ever watched the rain?" Shen asked. Liang nodded. "Of course." "When the rain falls," Shen continued, "some drops land in the pond, some on the stones, some on your face. Have you ever tried to stop the rain with your hands?" Liang shook his head, a tired half-smile tugging at his mouth. "That would be impossible." Shen smiled back. "Your thoughts are like the rain," he said. "You are standing in the storm, trying to catch every drop, trying to push away the clouds. No wonder you are exhausted. Sleep does not come when you are fighting the sky. A breeze slipped through the small opening in the door, carrying with it the cool scent of night and distant pine. The lantern flame flickered, shadows shifting on the walls like gentle waves. Liang took a sip of tea. It was slightly bitter at first, then mellow, leaving a warm trail inside him, as if someone had lit a small candle in his chest. "So, what should I do?" he asked quietly. "If I don't fight the thoughts, won't they just drown me?" Shen placed his cup on the table, the ceramic making a soft, round sound against the wood. He leaned forward slightly. "Try this," he said. "Tonight, when you lie down, do not try to clear your mind. Do not try to be calm. When a thought comes, a regret, a fear, a plan, say to it, 'Ah, you are here.' Bow to it in your heart. Let it sit beside you, like a guest in this room. Feel your body on the bed. Feel the rise and fall of your breath. Let the thoughts come and go, like rain on the roof. You are not the storm. You are the house that hears the rain." Liang listened, his eyes growing softer. He could hear it now, the distant dripping of water from the eaves outside, each drop landing with a tiny, hollow tap. He imagined himself lying in his small room at home, listening to his thoughts the way he might listen to rain. Not something to be controlled, just something that happens. "But what if I can't accept it?" he whispered. "What if I keep wanting it to stop?" Shen chuckled, a sound like dry leaves rustling. "Then accept that too," he said. "Accept that you cannot accept. Let even your resistance be part of the weather. Do not make war with your own heart. When you notice you are struggling, say quietly inside, 'Ah, struggling is here.' And then feel your pillow under your head. Feel your blanket on your skin. Feel the breath going in and out." Liang stared into his tea. The surface had stopped steaming as much now, the liquid cooling slowly. A tiny ripple moved across it, caused by the slight tremor in his tired hands. He watched it settle. "Does this really work?" he asked. Shen's gaze drifted to the open doorway, where a slice of night sky was visible. A single star shone through, distant and small, yet steady. "When I was a young monk," Shen said softly, "I spent many nights just as you do, fighting ghosts made of thoughts. One night, my teacher told me, 'Stop trying to win. Let the ghosts sit and tell their stories. You just keep breathing.' I didn't believe him, but I was too tired to keep fighting. So I lay there, listening to the clamor in my mind, and I simply felt the roughness of the straw mat against my cheek, the coolness of the night air on my bare feet. Somewhere between one breath and the next, the ghosts became only whispers. And then they were gone. I had fallen asleep without realizing when the battle ended, because I had put down my sword." Liang's shoulders loosened a little. He could almost feel his own bed beneath him, even though he was still sitting on the monastery mat. He imagined lying down, feeling the fabric against his skin, listening to his thoughts like rain on a roof he did not need to repair in the middle of the storm. Shen poured the last drops of tea into Liang's cup. Only the stream was thinner now, making a faint, high sound as it met the liquid already inside. The teapot grew lighter in his hands. "Tonight," Shen said, "do not chase sleep. Do not chase peace. Let them find you while you're busy accepting what is already here. The warmth of the blankets, the sounds in the room, the rhythm of your own breathing. Even your restless thoughts are part of this moment. When you stop asking them to be different, they lose their sharp edges. Liang took a slow breath, feeling the air move in and out of his lungs. The tea warmed his belly. The night outside was no different, but inside, something had shifted, like a window opened just a crack to let in fresh air. He finished his tea and placed the cup back on the table. The sound was soft, final, yet gentle, like the closing of a book that you know you will open again. For the first time in many months, he did not feel the urgent need to fix himself before lying down. He felt, instead, a quiet curiosity. What would it be like to simply allow everything to be as it is, just for one night? In the dim light of the lantern, with the old monk sitting peacefully across from him, the question itself felt like a pillow, soft and inviting. And somewhere, in the slow turning of his breath, the possibility of rest began to glow, small and steady, like that distant star framed in the doorway, waiting patiently in the vast, accepting sky. Shen watched Liang's face soften in the lantern glow, the kind of softening that happens not because a problem has been solved, but because someone finally stops wrestling with it. The night outside had deepened into a thicker blue, almost black, and the chorus of nighttime insects had settled into a steady, humming rhythm that felt like the village breathing in its sleep. Shen reached out and gently closed the teapot's lid with a soft click that echoed faintly in the quiet room, and as the sound faded, the stillness seemed to expand, filling every corner of the space like a slow-moving tide. Liang's eyes drifted toward the open doorway again, to that sliver of sky where the stars shimmered alone. He felt the heaviness in his shoulders loosen just one more notch, as though invisible strings were being carefully untied by the darkness itself. Authorities. Shen rose, the movement so slow and fluid that for a moment Liang could not tell where the monk's robes ended and the drifting shadows began. Shen stepped to the door and slid it closed halfway, leaving just enough space for the night air to breathe through. The quiet lingered for a moment, long enough for Liang to feel his chest rise and fall, the rhythm so gentle it was almost like rocking. In that rocking motion, his mind drifted to something Shen once mentioned, how acceptance was not a task, but a doorway. And in the dim room, warmed by the last traces of tea, Liang felt a part of himself step through without effort. Shen settled back down, shifting his robes around him like soft waves. He placed his hands on his knees, palms open, and his eyes drifted toward the old wooden beams overhead. When he spoke again, his voice was lower, softer, like the beginning of a breeze before dawn. There was once a young nun named May, Shen said, who lived far from this monastery, in a hermitage perched on the edge of the northern cliffs. She came there with one wish, to escape the noise of the world so she could finally quiet her restless mind. But the mountains have their own lessons. Liang's breath slowed. The room dimmed in his awareness, becoming less a place and more a warm space in which Shen's words painted scenes in the air. He let himself sink into the story, inhaling as though pulling the mountain wind into his lungs, exhaling as though letting go of thoughts that no longer needed to stay. May had arrived at the hermitage in early winter, when the air tasted of snow even before the clouds let it fall. The wind scraped across the cliffs like a metal comb, making low, droning sounds as it threaded through gaps in the stone. The sky was pale, almost white, and the sun seemed too weak to melt even the thinnest frost on the ground. She climbed the wooden steps leading to the entrance of the hermitage, each step creaking under her weight, the wood cold through her shoes. Inside, the room was simple, wooden floors, a single window facing the valley, a small altar, and a straw mat. The mat was old and uneven, its fibers sticking up in places, brushing against her palms when she touched it. Dust floated in the air, caught in the thin shaft of winter light. May had imagined peace here. Silence. A mind like a still lake. But the mountains did not give her silence. They gave her the opposite. Every night, the wind slammed against the shutters with sharp pops. The beams moaned. The rafters pitifully shivered. Sometimes, snow slid off the roof with a heavy rush, shaking the entire structure. May tried to meditate through it, sitting cross-legged on the mat, her back straight, her hands resting in her lap. She would try to keep her focus on her breath, the cold air touching the tip of her nose, filling her lungs with a faint ache, then leaving her body like a thin stream of smoke. But the noise was relentless. She clenched her teeth, trying to will the wind to quiet. She imagined stuffing the shutters with cloth, reinforcing the rafters, silencing the shaking beams. She wanted the mountain to cooperate, to be gentle, to give her the quiet she believed she needed. Yet the harder she tried to find stillness, the more her mind echoed the raging wind outside. One night, as the storm raged stronger than usual, she sat in meditation and felt the whole hermitage tremble. Her breath shortened. Her shoulders tightened. A sharp thought cut through her. I came here for peace. Why won't the world let me have it? Her frustration swelled into her chest. She opened her eyes and glared at the window, as if the wind could see her. Then she noticed something. The moonlight outside was trembling, not because the moon itself shook, but because the paper covering the window rippled with each gust of wind, turning the light into a shimmering dance. It flickered across the floor, illuminating the wooden planks in shifting patterns, like silver threads being woven and unwoven by invisible hands. Her breath paused. She stared at the trembling light, and suddenly the thought arrived, not loud, but gentle, like a hand resting on her shoulder. The wind has always been the wind. The mountain has always been the mountain. It is only I who demanded it be quiet. The realization flowed through her body like warm water, spreading from her heart outward, loosening the tight knots in her shoulders, softening her jaw. She exhaled, and the breath felt long, deep, tender. She listened again, not fighting, not resisting. And in that listening, she heard something new hidden within the storm. Beneath the howling gusts, beneath the rattling wood, there was a subtle hum, an ancient, steady pulse, as though the mountain itself were chanting a sutra older than memory. She leaned back slightly, hands resting beside her on the wooden floor, fingers brushing the grain of the wood. The grain felt warm, alive. She closed her eyes, and she let the wind be wind. She let the mountain be mountain. She let her own restless mind be nothing more than another sound in the night. The storm did not stop, but inside her, it did. In that quiet surrender, her breath deepened. The cold air no longer felt sharp. It felt clarifying. The creaking beams no longer startled her. They felt like the natural language of the old wooden house adjusting to the winter. And when she finally lay down to sleep, pulling the thin blanket over her shoulders, she fell into rest so gently it was like falling into a cloud. Shen paused, letting the quiet stretch, letting Liang breathe into the space between thoughts. The room was warm, and the last of the tea's fragrance lingered like a distant ember, barely there, but enough to warm the air around their faces. Liang inhaled slowly, feeling his chest rise, and as he exhaled, he could almost feel his body sinking deeper into the cushion. His arms grew heavier. His breathing softened into long, unhurried waves. The stillness inside him pulsed like a second heartbeat. The quiet lengthened, and the air felt thick with softness. Shen waited until the breath between them matched like two lanterns flickering in the same wind. After a long moment, Shen's voice returned, low and velvety, like a stream sliding under a wooden bridge. Acceptance, he murmured, does not mean agreeing with everything. Sometimes, it is simply the decision to stop arguing with reality long enough to hear what it is trying to teach. His words melted back into the silence, and the silence gradually lifted another story into being, not abruptly, but the way dawn lifts its first shade of light over a sleeping field. There was a farmer named Tao who lived near the marshlands south of the old capital. Tao was a man who moved like someone always bracing for the next blow, shoulders hunched, eyes darting with suspicion, steps heavy with dread. Life had been hard for him. Floods had taken one harvest, drought another. His roof leaked. His tools broke. His neighbors prospered while he struggled. And every night, when he lay in bed, his mind spun with all the ways the world might fail him next. He heard the creaking beams and imagined them collapsing. He heard the croaking of frogs and imagined a sickness spreading. One evening, after a particularly long day wrestling with muddy soil that refused to soften, Tao trudged home with aching legs. His hands were cold despite the lingering heat of the daylight. Mud clung to his ankles. His clothes were stiff with dried sweat. As he walked, he muttered to himself, listing every injustice of the day, every worry waiting for him tomorrow. When he reached his hut, the sky was already sliding into darkness. A faint reddish glow lingered on the horizon, like the last heartbeat of the sun. Crickets chirped in uneven rhythms, a disorganized chorus. The marsh smelled of wet reeds, thick mud, and the faint sweetness of evening blossoms. Inside, the hut was dim. A single oil lamp burned by the wall, its flame flickering with each draft of wind through the bamboo slats. Tao sat heavily on his straw bed, the mat crackling from the weight. He rubbed his face with both hands, feeling the dryness around his eyes, the roughness of calluses on his palms. I cannot live like this, he whispered to the empty room. Every night, I lose to my own fear. On the table beside him lay an old bamboo flute, his late wife's. She had once played it every evening, filling the space with gentle melodies that softened the sharp edges of life. Tao picked it up, feeling the smoothness of the bamboo beneath the grime on his fingers. A crack ran along one side, thin but deep. He had never repaired it. Touching it always made his chest heavy. He lifted it to his lips, but he did not blow. Instead, he lowered it again and placed it in his lap. Tears filled the corners of his eyes, though none fell. A wind swept through the marsh, brushing against the hut, making the bamboo walls tremble. Tao flinched, as he always did. His breath quickened. His heart thudded like a fist pounding on a door. Then, something strange happened. The flute in his lap vibrated, just a little, as if responding to the wind itself. Tao froze. The vibration was faint, a soft buzzing against his legs. The wind passed, and the flute stilled. Then another gust came, and once again the flute hummed quietly, producing a tone so soft he had to lean closer to be sure he heard it. It wasn't music. It wasn't even a proper note. It was simply the bamboo responding to the world. The realization arrived slowly, moving through him like a warm hand pressing lightly into the center of his chest. The wind is not here to break me. It is just here. It is me who decided to fear it. He lifted the flute again, holding it horizontally. He rested his fingers lightly on the smooth surface. The next gust of wind came through the cracks, and once again the flute produced its soft, trembling hum. Tao breathed in, long and shaky. He exhaled, slower than he meant to. For the first time, the wind sounded less like a threat and more like a visitor singing its own strange song. He brought the flute to his lips and blew gently. The note wavered, uneven at first, then steadied. The wind outside carried it, weaving his breath into the night. Tao's shoulders loosened. His heart slowed. He played again, one long tone, then another. Simple, imperfect, fragile. The flute hummed with him, and the wind hummed back. As he played, something inside him unclenched. He was not fighting the world. He was joining it, letting himself be part of the weather instead of fearing it. The notes rose and fell, drifting out into the marsh, merging with the wind, the frogs, the rustling reeds. When he finally set the flute down, the night no longer sounded hostile. It sounded alive. Tao lay on his straw bed. The mat was rough, the air was cool, the marsh was loud. But none of these things were enemies anymore. He breathed in, slow and steady. He breathed out, soft and unhurried. And sleep came to him like a friend returning after a long journey. Shen's voice faded into the night within the small wooden room, and Liang felt his breath deepen once again, the stories lingering around him like drifting lanterns on a still river. The night was warm now, the air thick with quiet, and Shen's gentle presence felt like a hand guiding him toward the edge of rest. But Shen did not speak further. He let the silence settle, inviting the next breath to soften the world even more, preparing the mind for whatever lessons might still be waiting just beyond the curve of darkness. Shen let the final echoes of Tao's story dissolve into the quiet, like a bowl of water settling after being stirred. The lantern's flame had shrunk lower, its light softer, rounder, tinged with gold. Outside, the night insects had found a steady rhythm, a gentle hum that rose and fell like a cradle being rocked by the hands of the dark. Liang didn't speak. He didn't need to. His breath had already grown slower, broader, moving through him like warm waves rolling over smooth sand. Shen folded his hands in his lap, the sleeves of his robe settling in soft folds. His voice, when it came, felt less like sound and more like a warm current drifting through the air. Everything about the room seemed to lean in to listen. The wooden beams, the tatami mat, the faint steam still clinging to the teapot. All three of them, Shen whispered. Liang with his tea, Mei with her storm, Tao with his flute. They learned the same truth in different shapes. Peace does not come from controlling the moment. Peace arrives when you let the moment be what it already is. He paused, letting Liang breathe into the words. The silence was thick, soft, like a blanket being tucked around the body. When you stop fighting the tea for being warm, the storm for being loud, the wind for being wild, then the world softens toward you. Not because it changed, but because you are no longer bracing against it. A faint breeze slipped through the half-open door, carrying the cool scent of night pine. It brushed lightly against Liang's face, cool on his cheeks, settling along his jaw like a gentle hand cupping him. He inhaled, feeling that coolness travel into his lungs, filling him, then drifting out with his exhale, long and slow, a breath that seemed to tug the world into stillness with it. Shen's voice softened even further, dropping into a tone that seemed to vibrate low in the chest, warm as embers. And you, too. You are allowed to rest now. You do not need to solve your thoughts before sleep. You do not need to chase quiet. Let your mind be like the tea in the cup, warm, settling. Let your thoughts be like the wind on May's mountain, free to come, free to go. Let your fears be like Tao's flute, vibrating softly until they become music. Liang's eyelids grew heavy. He didn't fight it. His breath lengthened again, spreading into his belly, then retreating, slow and deep. He felt the cushion beneath him soften, as if it had become thicker, warmer. His back loosened, his hips releasing tension he didn't know they carried. Even his fingers, curled slightly in his lap, felt heavy in a comforting way, as though gravity were rocking them into sleep. Your heart knows how to settle. You only need to let go of the fight. The lantern flickered again, its light wobbling across the walls in gentle waves. Liang's vision softened around the edges, the world blurring into softness. His breath continued its steady rhythm, and with every exhale, his chest felt lighter, as though something unneeded was slipping out into the night air. "Notice your body," Shen murmured. "Notice how it sinks a little more with each breath. The weight behind your eyes loosening, the muscles of your face softening, your jaw growing slack, your shoulders melting just a little lower, your belly rising and falling, rising and falling, like a small boat drifting on a quiet lake." Liang felt as though he were lying down already, even though he was still sitting. His mind drifted toward a softness beyond thought, a space where images floated like lanterns on water. May's trembling moonlight, Tao's humming flute, the warm tea steaming under lantern glow. They blended together into a single feeling, a kind of deep, tender acceptance that filled him from the inside out. "You are worthy of rest as you are," Shen whispered. "You don't have to earn it. You don't have to prove anything to the night. The night accepts you completely. The world accepts you. Even your wandering thoughts, even your worries, let them be guests sitting nearby, not enemies at the door. You do not have to push them away. You do not have to hold them close. Simply breathe and let them drift." Liang's head dipped slightly. He did not correct it. His breath slowed further, drifting into the quiet spaces between Shen's words. "Sleep will come," Shen said, "not because you forced it, but because you opened the door. Let your breath be the door. Let your softness be the key." The room around them grew quieter still. The lantern sighed as its flame shrank again. The breeze at the doorway softened into something barely felt, like memory brushing the skin. Shen's final words floated out slowly, like a feather falling through warm air. "Rest now. Let the world hold you. Let the breath carry you deeper and deeper, like sinking into warm water, like settling into clouds, like drifting into a night that has no end, no edge, no expectation. You are safe. You are enough. You are already home." The last of the lantern light dimmed into a gentle glow, and the silence around them stretched wide and soft, inviting, endless, waiting for the breath to fall into sleep. Most of us believe peace is something we must achieve, a prize waiting at the end of a perfectly organized life. We tell ourselves that once we finish the work, silence the notifications, resolve every conflict, and empty every corner of the mind, then we will be allowed to rest. But this belief may be the greatest barrier to peace we have. We have mistaken control for calm. We have confused quietness with safety. And in the process, we've trained ourselves to fear the very texture of being alive. Modern life amplifies this mistake. We live inside a constant pressure chamber, hustle culture, relentless comparison, the fear of falling behind. We're taught to optimize every minute, fix every emotion, and scrub away anything uncomfortable. Yet this endless polishing of the self creates a strange paradox. The more we demand calm, the more chaos we feel. The more we chase happiness, the more fragile we become. Ancient Buddhist wisdom cuts through this illusion with disarming simplicity. Peace is not something you create. It's something you stop interrupting. Like May listening to her storm or Tao hearing the wind in his flute, we begin to realize that discomfort is not an enemy. Noise is not necessarily a threat. Restlessness is not a personal failure. Each is simply part of the weather of existence. When we stop insisting the moment be different, the body softens, the mind widens, and life, just as it is, becomes bearable, even beautiful. Perhaps peace isn't hidden at the end of a perfect day. Perhaps it's been waiting in the cracks of every imperfect one. If this story brought you even a breath of stillness, I invite you to be the Sanctu, Asma. If you felt something soften inside you, please tap like so this teaching reaches someone who needs it tonight. If you want more sleep stories, more gentle wisdom, more reminders that you are allowed to slow down, click subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a moment of calm. And before you drift off completely, answer this in the comments. What part of your life are you finally ready to stop arguing with? May your night be soft. May your breath be steady. May peace find you exactly where you are.